Hi, I'm Rashonda. I'm the creator of artbyrow.com, where I help hobby artists grow by teaching them how to focus on the process rather than the outcome. I specialize in developing creativity, creating more art in less time, and using graffiti art to generate ideas instead of always wondering what you should be working on. If this sounds like something you'd be interested in, subscribe so you get notified whenever new videos get uploaded. Now let's head on over to the art studio and do some drawings. We're going to work on today's tutorial together. Let's head on over. All right, welcome to the studio. Today we are going to make some night skies. It's October, mid-October right now at the time I'm making this video, so everyone's getting into the Halloween spirit and doing all kinds of creepy, spooky, fall, Halloween type drawings. And this is a really easy drawing to make, and it's a really good way to practice blending your markers together and getting that smooth gradation of color. So for this first one, I'm going to do gray, just because that's kind of the standard for the Halloween sky, the night sky. We're going to do grays. So what I did first was I took a scrap piece of paper and I just kind of played around with some of the different markers to figure out which ones I wanted to use, which ones are going to blend nicely together. And then I set those aside, and I also put them in order from the lightest to the darkest. And I'm going to try to leave them as I'm working in that order, so I know exactly which marker I'm going to need to grab. And the reason I say I'm going to keep them in order is because you kind of work back and forth with markers between your lighter and darker colors to blend them and get that gradation. So what we want to do is make where it looks like our moon is over here in this corner, and you can do this however you want, but this is the layout I'm going to use for my colors, for my gradation. My moon's going to be here, so I want to leave that white, and then it's going to fade into darker. And you can start wherever you want. You can start with the moon, you can start with your darker area. And I'm not going to use black for the sky itself, but if you wanted to go even darker, you could. That's your choice to make. That's a personal choice. Whichever way you want to do it's fine. My darkest color is a dark gray, but you could go even darker than that on yours if that's what you want to do. You also don't have to use gray. You could do this with any color. Purple looks really cool for a Halloween night type sky. The other thing I want to mention is that I'm doing these on artist trading cards. And artist trading cards are a really good way to save time and to get more work done in less time. You can really get a lot done because they're not very big. They're the size of like a baseball card or a Pokemon card. The intention for these are to trade them, but you don't have to. You can just keep them, put them in a little portfolio. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing I want to do is lay out where I want my moon to be and how big I want it to be on my paper. How much white space do I want to leave? And then I'm just going to start filling in kind of a band of this light color. And as you can see, this marker's on its last leg here. It's starting to run out a little bit, but that's okay. The only problem it causes when your markers start to run out is your paper's a little less saturated with the solvent, with the alcohol. So it makes it a little harder to blend, but we can still do it. We'll get through. So I'm just going in, putting in my next band of color, the next darkest one. And one of the things with markers, first of all, you want to use alcohol-based markers for this, which you can use Sharpie or Bic or whatever A lot of people like Copics. I don't really use those. They're not too much in my budget, and I'm not an illustrator, so I go with the cheaper markers and they work just fine. But you want to work while they're wet, because while your markers are wet, you can blend them and get them to transition good into each other. And I went ahead and grabbed an even lighter marker, or you could do a colorless blender would work for this too. I don't want this hard edge where it turns white right there. So I just want to blend that into the paper so it's not as harsh of a line. So what you want to do is just keep going darker and darker as you move along. And then go back in with your lighter color to smooth that out and blend them in so they fade together instead of having a harsh line. So you can see right now, I think the camera picks that up good enough. You can see there's kind of a harsh line right there, and we don't want that. We want this to blend in together. So all you do is take your lighter color and go right over where those two lines meet. And you can do circles, or you can do straight lines, or back and forth, however you want. But you want to pull those colors together so they blend. And then I'm going to take my darkest color, and you can mix and match colors. You don't have to use all of one brand of color of marker. As long as they're all alcohol based that you're using, you can blend them together and mix and match. And something that I've had quite a few people ask me about is if using a lighter color and a darker color together, if it's going to ruin the marker, the lighter color, and the answer is no. So I just use this darker gray, and then I'm going to go back over with the lighter gray. That darker gray will not transfer to this marker. Even if that was black and I was going over it with a really light color, you won't pick up the color on your marker and ruin it, so you don't have to worry about that. And then you can even go over a couple layers down with your lighter color, especially if the tone of it is a little bit different. You can go over top and blend those together so they look a little bit more uniform. And then really all you want to do is just kind of go back and forth until you get the look that you're going for with the values that you want and the gradation that you're looking for. And when your markers are still, the paper's still wet, you can get your markers to blend really nicely. And the other thing is, with markers, they're somewhat transparent. So if you go back over top, you can darken them up and change the value by adding layers. And you'll cover up whatever's underneath it, but you'll also add to it a little bit. So it's really just a matter of working your way back and forth, adding in more of one marker, blending it in, making sure you have a good gradation of colors. So now that we have, I'll take that off of here so it's a little bit easier to see. We have our background. We have a fade here. And I might want to go a little bit darker just here in this corner. And this is where, if you wanted to, you could use a black marker and make that even darker. But I'm going to add a tree over top of this, so I'm not going to worry too much about it because that's going to get covered up anyway. So the next thing you want to do is add some kind of a foreground over top of this. So we have our background, the sky's the background, and then we're going to add something over top. And this can be whatever you want to do. I'm going to add a tree in here. And for this, I'm going to use a brush pen. And these brush pens work really, really well for trees because you can taper the branches and it makes it really easy to get those branches to look nice. So we're going to start with the trunk. Fill all this in black. And you can use a different type of marker if you want. And now when I get up here, I want to add more of a bigger branch, the rest of the trunk. Break it up a little bit so it's not just one big solid tree trunk going up there. We want it to branch off. It'll make it look a little bit more interesting. And then just fill that in. If you don't have a brush pen, you can use any kind of black marker. It doesn't matter. I just like the brush pen for making the ends of the branches. You can get some nice thick and thin lines. So for the rest of your tree, so I have the main section of the trunk. You can add more branches coming off down here if you want to break this up. But what you really want to do is just start breaking up that negative space and adding a little bit coming out into your sky. Just to make it look a little more interesting, not quite so boring. You can add, if you wanted to, you could add a little bit of maybe some leaves, some little bit of leaves that are left over from the summertime that haven't quite fallen off yet. And you can do as few or as many as you want. Whatever you think looks good, just use your judgment. And if you're not sure, just give it a try. That's one of the things that makes doing drawings on the artist trading cards, is that if you mess up, it's not a big deal. You just do another one. You don't have hours invested in it. So there's a little less pressure, which gives you that freedom to experiment a little bit and try some different things and not be afraid. They're really a lot quicker to do your artwork on it. So that's really why I like them. I like doing my drawings on them because they're such a huge time saver. Okay, so that's it for my tree. So make sure you can see that. And I could have made some bigger branches and done some different things with that, but I think you get the idea here. So when you do yours, you can make it however you want. Put as big of branches as you want coming off, as many branches. Maybe a bunch of branches would look better. I'm going to add some ground down here at the bottom, making that kind of lumpy, uneven. And then I want to add a fence in here. So I'm going to start with this bottom rail or whatever this is called for a fence. And I'm making it uneven intentionally because I think that adds to that Halloween spooky vibe if the fence doesn't look perfect. So I'm going to add my two main rails, and then the posts are going to go all the way to the ground. And then you can do these, so some of them are kind of crooked. If you wanted to, you could make them beaten up or broken. You could add an owl in your drawing somewhere. A lot of different options here. I could add a couple bats in the sky. Okay, so here's our main drawing. Get that evened up there. So the last thing I'm going to do is take a white Jelly Roll pen, and I'm going to add some reflections from the moon. And the moon's coming from this way, so I'm going to stick with doing it along this edge. I'm just going to follow along. You could add a little bit down on the ground if you wanted to. And these details don't have to be perfect. I mean, you can tell that it's a fence, you can tell it's a tree. Try not to stress out too much about your artwork being perfect, or you're not going to enjoy your time spent making it. It's more important to enjoy the time you're doing it than to have everything come out perfect. And it's much more fun to experiment, play around, and try new things than it is to always worry about everything turning out exactly the way that you picture it in your head. I can add some up here on these little guys. I don't want to cover them up too much. So we're just about finished there. And there we go. There is our Halloween night sky drawing with markers. Practice some blending of colors together. It's a really good way to work on blending your markers together. So another thing you can do is you could use different colored cards. And this is just done on cardstock, but you could do them on browns. That gives it a little bit different look. Those are fun to do things on. And you could also use a color other than the grays. You could use, like I said, purple, blue. You could try doing some different colors and see what they look like. So I hope you enjoyed this. It's a really, really good beginner drawing. It's really easy to do them on the artist trading cards. You could do a bunch of them, try some different things, try some different colors, different style trees, maybe put some pumpkins or some owls or something in there, experiment a little bit. So I hope you like this. If you did, it'd be great if you could leave a like and a share. And I will talk to you in the next video. So how did you do? Hopefully you followed along with the tutorial and worked on your own artwork. If you enjoyed this and you want to get notified of other lessons that are coming up in the future, go ahead and hit the subscribe button and you'll get notified whenever something new gets uploaded. Have a good day and happy creating!